am doing this live today real quick because I was just on the phone with one of our friends-in-law, and they started talking to me about their experience in the IRS. They have been working with them over the past, they have actually worked for them for 8 years, and they started a service where they help people to realize that they do not have to use social security numbers and to get withholding and things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Hey Reese, thanks for joining. Okay, you have no audio. You got to take yourself off. Okay, there you go.
Got it.
Awesome. So you just started to tell me about when and why you started your service business.
Yeah, so basically working for the IRS, it gave me the realization that we really don't have a responsibility to pay for taxes, especially not throughout the year. There are some people, when they hear about privatization, they hear about becoming separate from the federal government by basically self-governing.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of feel like there's some kind of conspiracy behind that. And me coming from a person that actually worked there, I realized if there's no conspiracy about it, we are not required to pay taxes. And the thing that basically distinguishes a person who is volunteering to pay taxes versus a person who is not volunteering is a person who's using the social security number versus using the EIN number. And this is honestly by IRS policy. It's by the way that they process documents. It's by the way that they categorize certain types of accounts. Like for example, if you go and get a living trust, especially a foreign trust, the EIN number they issue for that is tax exempt, and everybody qualifies for one. And it's tax exempt. There's no stipulation that tells one person that they can have that status versus another person who can't. I mean, the only people that use it are the people that know about it.
Right.
That's the only difference. If you know about it,
So what about the use of the numbers in general? He had started to say, nobody needs to use those numbers. Tell him a little bit
I
more
would
about
say, okay, so there are two different categories of people who want to be separate from the federal government. And from my perspective, the two categories are the people who want to participate in commerce and people who don't. They don't care to. If you want to participate in commerce, then you want to get your EIN number, and that's what creates your tax exempt status, where you can create economic structures. You can create administrative structures, and you can self-govern those structures just like how the U.S. government does. They just do it under this particular system that is basically based on natural law.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's all based on natural law. The maritime law versus the due process of law of the land, contract law, all that stuff is just basically a differentiation between maritime law of the water and then the land
Right.
law, which governs humans. And so I did more research, just understanding more about what is the difference between the public and the private, and why does the federal government have this jurisdiction to govern the public. And I realized in those studies that the public doesn't exist. It's just a figment or a construct because the European pirates, they actually needed somewhere to employ themselves. They needed a job. And so they created the public in order for them to be able to serve the public and give themselves value. Because if they were just to participate in trade and bartering and using commodities, they would have remained poor because they didn't have any land to associate with.
Right.
And so it just turned into, okay, well, we can't pirate the waters forever. We're going to have to come up on the land and live. We can't live on the water forever. So they just decided that they wanted to make humans their natural resource.
Right.
They come up on the land, they bring their water law with them onto the land, they figure out a way to fool us into becoming their commodity.
Right.
And we willingly do that. We work for their corporations and we willingly pay their tax. We willingly allow them to govern us. We vote for them to represent us. We do all these different things. When in all reality, all we would have to do is just administratively structure ourselves the way they do it, we can govern ourselves. It's no, I mean, there's no
Right.
conspiracy
I
behind it.
say that too. There's no conspiracy. The main conspiracy is propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only conspiracy, because just like you mentioned, when you go and read the laws that govern everything, you're just like, wow, this is awesome. Why don't we do it this way? Like, why don't we do it like how it's actually written right here? But when you talk to people that say stuff like, oh, we need to change the laws, or we need new laws, I start asking them, have you read the existing
Know the
ones?
laws, yeah.
Have you read the current stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Have you read the previous stuff that supports the current stuff? Or are you just looking at what's going on the outside and presuming that it's happening the way that it's written?
Mm-hmm.
That's which right. would make it the real conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
People actually say stuff like, especially people who've never read the Constitution, they've never read the Bill of Rights, they've never read the Articles of Confederation, they've never read the Magna Charta, mm-hmm. and they make jokes like, you know, they put it right on a napkin. I rule you now, says this powerful napkin, aka the Constitution, right? So they're like making a joke, and I'm like laughing because I'm like, you are making it obvious that you never read the document, because if you did, you would know that it's not just I am ruling over you because it says so on this paper. It's literally like, hey, this is a service corporation, and if you work for this service corporation, these are the rules you have to abide by. Mm-hmm. And which makes it obvious that, guess what, if you don't work for that administration, then you don't have to abide by anything.
Yep, if you're not an elected official, you can mind your business.
Yeah, it's none of your business at all what they're doing. So when everybody's freaking out like, oh, they're making this new mandate, they're making this new law, they're making this new rule, I'm snacking on chips. Like, so what y'all worried about?
Exactly.
Y'all work for them?
That's exactly how I'd be like, why are y'all so into this stuff? We have so much work to do for our own administration. You know, why are we focusing on their administration when we really should be doing our administration to figure out what kind of agencies do we want? And that's why I wanted to tell you about, I think you might like where I'm going with my service, because as I'm encouraging companies, small businesses like, you know, us entrepreneurs, I'm encouraging them to deregulate from federal standards and regulations and policies and things like that, and go into using contract law so that they can govern themselves in commerce. And so while I'm teaching them the principles of doing that and teaching them the administrative process of doing that, then I'm basically allowing them to choose what they want to do with those dollars. Because if I'm now not giving it to the Internal Revenue Service, then I have some little leeway to figure out what I can do in my own community with that same money.
Exactly. Because that's why I love that, and I appreciate that you did think about me saying, you know, I would like the direction you're going, because I do love the direction that you're going, even though I don't know the whole thing, because of just where you're beginning. And it's a very powerful position to put people in, because I'm coming from the background of make more money. Okay, that was my primary thing, you know, 11 years ago, like when I mentioned to you, and I started showing people how to set up their websites and stuff like that. And then, like you just mentioned, I realized, well, what if you don't need more necessarily? What if you just need to keep more? Or what if you just need to use whatever amount you have smarter, you know?
That's right, because if we tell them, all right, you can deregulate from the federal government, and the money that you're giving to them, you're now exempt. You don't have to give it to them anymore. So not only am I putting money in your pocket, you can choose to do what you want to do with it. But if I tell you that, okay, now I'm going to give you the option to use those same funds to put it over to another governing administration, where if you and I say, I'm going to create a public agency, and that public agency is designed to, let's say, for example, improve our education system, then it gives our people enough money to say, I can just use the money that I was paying in these taxes and start paying it to this agency here that's actually going to be for my public best interest. Right. You know, if we're going to just make up a public and going to say that we're serving, we might as well do it the right way.
Right. You know, so I love that. I love that idea, because it reminds me of the private membership association.
Mm.
So yeah, we might be using the word, serving the public, but it's actually for private members who have exempted themselves or opted out of the other version of society.
Yeah, of governing. I read a science, there's an excerpt that I got from somewhere that's an excerpt from a political science review. And it talked about the difference between the public agencies and private agencies. And there was basically the overall argument that there is no difference between public and private because the public is made up of people who are private. And so if any private person creates what they would call a public organization or a public agency, it's still what they called it is quasi public,
right?
Because it's formed in the best interest of the private person who created it, regardless.
Right.
I mean, it'll always be for the best interest of the private person.
The thing about it is that there's one set of rules for the service agent and another set of rules for the potential customers of the service agency. So the people that might be using the services from that agency are still private people, but the workers, the administrators that actually work for agency are the only ones who might be considered public.
Public. Right, because they're supposed to be there for the best interest of those customers.
Yes.
And that to me, I think is what they were saying. If there were going to be a differentiation between private and public, that would be it.
Because right now the agents of the agency are acting like the pirates, and they're actually operating in the best interest of the agency itself, and not the people that the agency is serving or created to serve, if you will.
Right, and that's what makes them private interests.
Right, they become privateers,
interest but their own.
Yeah, exactly. They become privateers at that point because it's their own interest that they're working in, as opposed to the service of the people.
Right, the people are there, and I always call it government services. This is something that I say to kind of put it in context for people. Is that the federal government right now, they're providing what I would call government services.
Yes.
I also like to bring it to people's attention is that any service provider in commerce is not entitled to a monopoly. So if they're providing government
say that one more time.
They're legally, they have no right to a monopoly. So if we're exercising eminent domain, if we're saying we're sovereign, if we're saying this is not a monopoly, this is a capitalistic environment, if you're providing government services, guess what? I can create public agencies and provide government services too, because it is obviously a private business.
Wow, that's a powerful concept to pause on, because when we're looking through some of this stuff, like with the public utilities, for example, they do talk about having a monopoly and calling it a natural monopoly, and it's
who gave you the damn monopoly? If anybody, it would be us that has it.
They think they got it though. They got it, and the bar members that protect them and write their rules. They're not even laws. They write their rules, and then people get the impression that they can have this monopoly. So tell me a little bit about how somebody goes through your service. And the reason why I'm asking is because I have these two books here. One is called Business Guide to Payroll, Withholding.
Nice. Okay.
It's written by a gentleman named David Champion. And he has a book called Income Tax Shattering the Myths, which I also have. I just don't have it near me like I do.
I would love to read both of those.
And then he has this one here that's called The Business Handbook for Forms, W-9, 1099, and U.S. Person.
That looks like it's so relevant. Yes.
Oh yeah. These are only 14 pages, and as you see, the type is really big, and it's because the book that he made, Income Tax Shattering the Myth, these are excerpts of it, of just those parts that are pertinent to someone who is talking to their HR. Okay. And then this is for the green one, because this one is blue. And so this green one is for if you are the business owner. If you're the small business owner. So
that's exactly how my service is structured.
Yeah,
from the employee to the employer. Yeah.
There's a difference though, and that's why I'm asking how you facilitate your service. So when we read the IRS code that you may be familiar with, 26 CFR 34 something, and it says about the voluntary withholding agreement. that part that says voluntary, um, for the what do they call it? The employee withholding certificate. So when you read that section, it talks about the fact that the W-4 is considered the voluntary withholding agreement.
Correct.
And if an employee fills it out, it's evidence that they wish to withhold. And then it says if you no longer wish to withhold, you should provide a notice of termination to your employer, directly to your employer. So to me, it seems to. Have you ever seen that part?
I've never seen that form. I know that we have. Okay, yeah, because I'm what I've been teaching from is the W-4, W-9, 1099, SS-8. Those are the documents that I focus on with my service. But this sounds like it's relevant, very relevant.
Okay, so let me show you that part, because this is going to be where our conversation basically springs from. Okay. It is 26 CFR. CFR. Okay, here we go. 26 CFR 31.3404P1. So if you look at the screen, it'll say voluntary withholding agreement, employment, taxes, and collection of income tax at the source. So in this form here, it says, you know, the employer agreement is the W-4, okay? And then it tells you from, you know, December 31st, 1970, et cetera, and then it says, an employee, okay, here, an employee who desires to enter into agreement under this section shall furnish his employer with a W-4 withholding exemption certificate. Okay? And then it says the furnishing of such form W-4 shall constitute a request. They're basically saying you are asking for it. And then it says, in the case, it says if the employee wishes to specify, this is the important part, that the agreement, which is the W-4, terminate on a specific day, the employee shall furnish the employer with a request. Okay?
Oh.
So.
Okay, but you know, it's crazy because I never have seen it written out in the manual. I mean, in the manual like that. But to me, it's always been implied by the rules, which is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing to teach. That is implied by the fact that
I go from what they actually say, because the law is not supposed to be implied. The law is supposed to be expressed.
And that's why I'm like, oh my God, I can't even believe I'm seeing it written out this way, because the law, I mean, just the way it's structured, it implies that you're volunteering.
Exactly. And they actually have the section called right there, voluntary.
Yeah, voluntary.
A lot of people have not seen it, because it says right there, the first word, voluntary. And then say it again, voluntary.
That's crazy.
And then it says right there, I showed you, should the employee, if the employee wishes to specify that the agreement terminate, they should provide their employer. So what it seems to me that the IRS is doing is pitting the employee against the employer. Because now if they go and submit this, you know, they write a notice specifying that they wish the agreement terminates on a specific day, the employers unfortunately start saying that you have to deal with the IRS, when in the rules it doesn't say that you have to deal with the IRS
at all. Okay, let me tell you, there's more to it, because the IRS is actually pimping these small business owners.
Of course, yes.
Because the IRS is a collection agency. So
a debt collection agency like that.
So why is it that they have collections happening through people's payroll that has to be paid for by the small business? They're processing third-party transactions on behalf of the government for free. The government does not even give them compensation for collecting all this money, paying for payroll processing, adjusting all these exemptions, and taking in all these forms, processing all these forms on behalf of the IRS to give them money that, again, the people may not even owe the money.
Right, but
Like
the employers
take a position.
the employers feel as if it's their duty as
Mhm.
part of their
Big employer.
incorporation
Yeah.
into the government for whatever business license that they might be operating under. They think it's
Mhm.
an obligatory, uh, part of that agreement to
Right.
have that business license. They think like, okay, the fact that I have a business license, it means that I have to comply. And when they're asked, what they're using, what laws, whatever that they're using to come to that conclusion, they cannot show it to you.
There is none. There is no, and I remember while I was working for the IRS, I would see this old video of this lady. She was talking about how she was a tax examiner for 20 something years, 25 years plus. And she was like, I will pay you $1 million right now if you can show me anything that says we're required to pay taxes.
Yeah, there's a couple of people who are doing that. I actually, right next to me, funny enough, have, as a matter of fact, it's in my the disc is in my thing right now,
Mm-hmm.
in my computer right now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a guy basically teaching the same thing. I think he has like his figure that he's offering is big. I think it might even be six figures that he's offering to have anybody show him that it's required. But that's not where people's hang up is. People's hang up is how to cancel it.
Right,
So
how to get out of it without the IRS coming after you.
yeah, well, here it basically says that you're supposed to go through your employer. So if you cancel through your employer, the IRS, if they do send you any mail, it's just a fishing expedition, and you can just ignore it because it's been canceled, because it's initiated through your employer. That's what people don't understand. It's initiated by the employer. So
Okay.
if it's initiated by the employer, then it makes sense, common sense, that it can be terminated through the employer. But people try to attack the IRS, and they always lose because, of course, if it's a voluntary agreement and the IRS put right here that it's your employer you're supposed to be talking to, they don't understand why you're talking to them.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, in my studies, there's a very key definition that we have to pay attention to, which is the term employer-employee.
Yes, yes.
That is master-slave relationship. And
Yes.
so what happens when we have that master-slave relationship, the IRS has clothed itself with the responsibility to determine work relationships between workers and employers. And so what ends up happening is they put definitions, which are, of course, their guidelines, not their laws, their guidelines about how you should define a worker in your company, whether it be a contractor or an employee.
Yeah, but they also have a definition for common law employee, which when they describe the scenario that makes one a common law employee, they don't say anything about taxes or withholding. But in their definitions for statutory employee, government employee, they do. They said this relationship means that withholding has to be blah blah blah, and then the other one is they say the same thing. This relationship means that withholding is blah blah blah. And the only definition that does not include anything about withholding is their definition of common law employee, which they only define in one section and then never talk about it again.
They call you the slave. And
no, they just say, Deborah works for Bob at Bob's store. But it does when it's specifically the definition of a common law employee, they don't say anything about withholding. See what I'm saying? When they describe statutory employee, government employee, and self-employed, they start talking about withholding. So they have 4 definitions of employee on the public side of the IRS website. I can pull that up.
Okay.
So that you can
tell you about that, because when they have the type of employer, not self-employed, I think it might be statutory employee, where the employer is defining the relation, or excuse me, defining the relationship based on how the person works for the company.
Yes, based
So,
on the employee. So they
yeah.
use the definition of the employee and what the employee does to define who the employer is.
Okay, hold on. Wait, let me get through this train of thought,
Okay.
because the employer employee relationship is based on a definition of how the work is done. Okay, so the IRS they have a form SS8. And on that form, the SS8, you're basically answering all kinds of questions about how the work gets done. Are you setting the schedule? Is it your equipment? Is this person in charge of their own, scheduling, and how is the work being done? Because they're trying to determine, are you an employee or are you a contractor? And the IRS gives themselves, or I should say, they clothe themselves with the responsibility or the jurisdiction to determine that. But in all truth and reality, if we were under contract law, appropriately under contract law, what we would be doing is creating our own contracts for all types of employees, no matter what the type is. If you're doing any work for me.
So you're saying, like, even if I was working for McDonald's, I should come with my own contract?
You should come with a W-9. You should come with
a W-9.
Your EIN number and a W-9, because you should be entering into a private agreement contract that does not involve the Internal Revenue Service. And
so why would I need an EIN if I'm not going to be withholding or engaging?
That is what allows you not to withhold without the IRS getting involved. So if you come and you say, all right, and it's actually the reason why we have this educational piece in our program is because there's a mutual benefit between the employer and the employee when they only enter into contracts privately without having a social security number involved.
Right.
The business, that's EIN to EIN when we're contracting. Okay, but when we're employee-employer, we're EIN to SSN. That's a different relationship. So what we're doing in our program is teaching companies only to employ under the EIN relationship. Never involve yourself with a social security number, because that's what inserts the IRS into your business. That's right. What inserts the Department of Labor into your business. And they start telling you.
Tell me why they need any number at all.
Well, because they have to document certain things if they're participating in commerce. They have to document if you paid somebody more than $600, you need to issue them a 1099 so that income is recorded, and you make sure that your business dealings are just recorded because you have incorporated yourself under that EIN number, and you have to keep records of your business dealings just like any other corporation
So
does.
Why can't we just make up a number and give it to them? Why? Because so what I'm trying to figure out is, like, the EIN is still a way for them to, attempting to track through the IRS. Through the IRS, still, it seems to still be a way for them to track something. Right. So if we don't want the IRS itself to track anything attached to us, I'm trying to figure out, why is it like,
I'm gonna tell you,
giving this SSN is optional anyway.
Okay.
So why can't I just make up a number like XYZ 1 2 3 4 5 6 and just use that number, so our private contract is tracked between us, but not a number that I got issued from a government entity?
Okay, that I understand, but what I'm going to say to you is that institutionalization is something that we have to focus on. Right now, we don't have any institutions that are centralized or automated enough for us to be able to track centrally what we're doing. The EIN.
Yeah, but I mean, like, privately. So I make up a number, 1 2 3, right? X,
but we're talking about a realistic situation. Me going to get a job at McDonald's.
Yes.
They wouldn't have a way of accepting me into their system with a number that I just made up.
But they don't. That's the thing.
I wouldn't be able to get that
job. Social is optional, period. Why do they have to have a number?
But this is what I mean. So in a real life situation, two private parties who are not a part of any type of formal corporation, they could do that, and they could formally do it and get their progress made however they do on their private time. But if I'm a person, if I'm just a teenager, I want to go get a job at McDonald's, and I make
it's funny we're talking about McDonald's, because if I'm not mistaken, it's like Taco Bell and McDonald's actually say that it's voluntary to provide an
Good.
SSN.
They should, and they should, because that's
So
what it is.
that means that if they
hold
don't
on.
get it, they still have to have some type of internal way that they
Not the social, but the EIN number. The social is not required, because what they're saying is that you can use either the social or the EIN number. And so what is to gain employment? This is what I mean by why we can't just make up a number. Is because if I want to go and do dealings with a formalized EIN corporation like McDonald's, if they're going in to process payroll and they're saying, okay, well, we need your identifying number so we can pay you. If I give them a number I made up, they won't be able to pay me. They won't be able to do anything with the number I made up. So I would have to have an EIN number, which is nothing wrong with having an EIN number, because it doesn't make you liable for anything. Having an EIN number is just having an EIN number. It doesn't make you liable for anything, but you can use it so that you can document your dealings of your corporate incorporation. So when you go to McDonald's and you tell them, well, listen, I don't want the IRS getting involved in my withholdings and taking things out. I'm a contractor. I want you to give me all of my money, gross money up front. I don't want you taking nothing out and giving it to nobody. I'm going to give you this EIN number, and McDonald's will do that. They will not, and the IRS will not interfere. The Department of Labor will not interfere, because the EIN number is just you representing your legal fiction like everyone else. It's a legal fiction. So when I go and I get it, I can use that in lieu of my SSN number, and I get all of the tax benefits, especially if I have a foreign tax exempt EIN number. Now that's another part of my program that I'm teaching people about, because EIN numbers get categorized based on what they're representing. Okay, so if you're getting a sole proprietorship type of EIN number, that's a certain classification. If you're getting a corporate EIN number, that's a certain classification. If you're getting a tax exempt organization, foreign trust, that's another classification. The best type of classification for us as free people is to get that foreign tax exempt EIN number, because under trust is how this entire government has been working. We don't own it, but we control it. And that's what a trust or a trustee is all about. I don't own anything, and I don't have any liabilities for anything. I'm not liable. All I'm doing is controlling this as the trustee. These are all my assets. These are all of my, how do you say it?
So it still basically makes you have to operate as a corporate entity. You can't operate in common law, and that's because that the organization that you're working with is not operating in common law.
Right, but you don't have to if you want to.
Yeah, I understand. I know it's not mandatory. I'm just trying to put it in perspective of the reason why you may have to go that route. It's because the employer is, so if the employer is, like a mega corporate entity, you have to go in there with the EIN. But if your employer is a common man, then you might have other leeway of however you decide your employment. Because see here, and thank you for sharing that. It says right here, under common law rule, anyone who performs services for you is your employee. If you can control, like you started to say, what will be done and how it will be done.
How the work is
This is so even if you give the employee freedom of action. And then they give you example. Donna Lee works as a salesperson employed full-time for Bob Blue. As an auto dealership, she works 6 days a week. In Bob's showroom, she requires only minimal assistance for closing and financing. Bob also pays the cost of health insurance, group term life insurance for Donna. Donna is an employee for Bob. Now, the main thing that is noteworthy about this is mainly because of its relationship with the other definitions of employees.
And so, this is the biggest trickery of language, though, because
when you read when we go to the other lists of employees, right? None of them just describe this relationship here. They all start talking about withholding. You notice this one doesn't say anything about withholding.
Right.
Doesn't say anything about
this is problematic. I'm going to tell you why this is problematic. It says what matters is that you have the right to control the details of how the services are performed. But when you enter into any mutual agreement or contract, both parties are equally in control of controlling the details of how the service is performed. Both parties are. So if that's what matters, then I'm still a contractor, because I'm still in control of what I do and don't do. You can tell me all day long that you want me to do this, that, or the other, but I have to agree to that. It's a mutual agreement. It's mutual control. And to me, that is just, once again, the IRS trying to assert themselves or insert themselves so that they can try to make a determination on behalf of somebody else. The fact of the matter is, no matter what type of work you're doing, you are selling your energy, you're selling your intellectual property, you are a contractor.
Right, you're selling your energy and labor.
Yeah, you are selling yourself. You are on the market, and you got a resume, that's your marketing tool. Your energy is your product, your intellectual property is your service. You are in business. There is no employee.
Right,
I'm a contractor.
Right, got you. That makes total sense.
You know, and that's what I want for people to start understanding, is that you have more power when you're in due process or contract law or private law. There are different names for it depending on what legal circle you're in. But under, to me, universal law, okay, you are there to sell yourself, your energy, and you're contributing your individual pieces to a greater whole. To me, that's service. To me, that is business. The whole planet is doing that. We're in service to each other.
Correct.
And that's this business. That's the way nature intended. So you can't call me your employer or your employee, because I'm not working for you. I mean, I'm here in my own best interest to be here.
I'm working with you. I'm not working for you.
Thank you.
Because then I could very well turn around and say, you working for me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
because it's a mutual relationship.
Right. So this is the section I was looking for, where I wanted to show you the list of the different employees that they have. Mm-hmm. So you see here, it says determining whether and I had to click around because, of course, the way that they display the information, they display it on certain pages, like, but then they don't always link them back together, so you kind of have to do that yourself. Mm-hmm. And I know they're doing it because they're trying to trick us. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this list right here is very revealing, because you see it says here independent contractor, like what we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. A common law employee, statutory employee, statutory non-employee, mm-hmm. and then government worker. Mm-hmm. When we click on any of these other ones here, I'm gonna click on it so you can see they all start talking about withholding. So just look at statutory employee real quick. See, they start talking about under Social Security and Medicare right away, right there. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, that's the SSN number.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm just showing you, like, real quick. I'm gonna go back and just click on each one of them just so you can see they all compared to where they're talking about the common law employee, mm-hmm. that they don't mention anything about the SSN or whatever. Mm-hmm. I found it very interesting that they see right here. Mm-hmm. It says agents are treated as self-employed for all federal tax purposes, including income and employment tax. So they're talking about taxes again. Let's go to the next one. Mm-hmm. And that's why I showed you the common law one first. That's the only one that doesn't say anything about taxes or withholding. See, even here it says government workers must, they start talking about the forms, W-2, wage statements, these factors are relevant, stuff mm-hmm. like that. They talk about withholding and paying federal income tax right there in the first paragraph. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And let's see if it's an independent contractor too. It may or may not be, because I remember having, like, studying this from back in September. Let's see. However, whether these people, the general rule is that independent contractors, if the payer is in control of the direct results of the earnings of the person. Okay, so they do mention something about taxes here. The earning of a person who is working as an independent contractor is subject to self-employment tax. So mm-hmm. in this first paragraph, again, they're talking about taxation. So going back to that list, the only type of employee that they don't talk about withholding and taxation is this one common law employee here. Mm-hmm. So even though the employer is still mentioned as being in charge of how certain things go, okay, mm-hmm. look at it. Nothing about nothing about withholding, nothing about for the purposes of taxation, nothing about forms. This is the only one on that list. Okay, because I think it relates to that 26 CFR 31 dot whatever that I showed you.
Oh, go back for me. Go back to that page. Hit the back button. Because I want you to click on that sidebar. So you can
want
see
me to go back to where it says common law employee?
Yeah. It's a sidebar right there. Click on that sidebar where it says related topics.
Yeah, we already were here. Independent.
Oh, we did that already?
Yeah, it says we clicked on it, but we can, that's where the list is.
Oh, okay. Because I wanted to see that SS8. I wanted you to see that that SS8 form if it
okay.
pull up.
So let's see if it's there.
Yeah, there it is. See the SSF form SS8 on the side?
Left or right?
On the right side.
Okay, yeah, I see it. About form SS8.
Click on that real quick. I want to show you how they are inserting themselves and what we're going to do to get out of it on the form. There you go. Click on the PDF. I'm going to show you specifically how we get out of that. All of the determinations of the relationships and all of that BS. Because if you also notice, when you click on all these different types of self-employees, they'll tell you, when we clicked on the independent contractor, it says, if you're an independent contractor, you are self-employed and you need to be on their taxes. It says
you are responsible for self-employment tax.
You got paid.
Yeah, I'm responsible for the self-employment tax, especially if it's zero.
Right. Okay. So they said they're gonna tell you what type of relationship you have with your workers and what category it is. So we pull up the SS8 and I'm gonna show you.
Yeah. I'm just saving it real quick. Okay. I have the form up here. Can you not see it?
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay, so all of these things, if you scroll down to maybe about the second page, they start asking you all these questions about your workers, okay, or about the one worker that you're talking about. So this form is being completed by a firm. Are you a W-2? Are you an EIN? Are you an employment agency? They're asking you all these questions about your business. Then they start going down. They ask you about all of the, are you providing the documents? I mean, are you providing the equipment? Is it your computer? Is it your office? Is it your car that's providing? They're asking you all this stuff. But right here on line 11, line 11 is where the gold is. It says, if the work is done under a written agreement between the firm and the worker, attach a copy, preferably signed by both parties. Describe the terms and conditions of the work arrangement. Now, that is where you distinguish between your employees and your contractor. And you can define for yourself inside of your agreement what type of titles you are going to take on and what those titles will mean, because that's what a contract does. Any agreement.
So if someone uses an EIN and they're the people they work for issues them a 1099, what do they do with that?
Well, if they have a 1099, that's just for their purposes. If they are required to file it, then they can file it. Or if they want to file it, they can file it. But when we have these EIN numbers, like I said before, it depends on what kind of EIN number you have that's going to determine what you're filing or if you're required to file. So for my clients, we're going to be operating under a 98 number type EIN. So that is tax exempt and it's foreign to the U.S. government.
That's what makes like we're going to have to do a class on this or something, because here's the other thing. I know we're on this SS8 right now, but I should have probably had another page open for just the IRS, because when they describe the withholding agent, okay, wow, look, because I did so many searches in here, withholding agent's already coming up. So when it talks about the withholding agent can only withhold from a foreigner. That's what it says. So what would be, how do you like rectify that when you can only be a withholder if you're withholding from someone foreign, which is the other problem with asking people for their SSN to withhold, because a withholding agent can only withhold from foreigners, is what the description says.
It would cause a conflict because they're, from how I understand foreign exempt agencies, there's no liability to withhold from. So they would, I mean, maybe they can, maybe they are only withholding from foreign people or foreign persons.
Withholding foreign partnership, withholding foreign trust.
Wait, hold on. Qualified intermediary, withholding foreign partnership. Let me move my thing out the way.
The definition of withholding agent comes up as only being able to withhold from foreigners.
I'm not following what is the purpose of a withholding foreign partnership or withholding foreign trust. Is it a type of trust?
Withholding is only for foreign. So they're saying withholding foreign partnerships, but it's just withholding from foreign partnerships. It says withholding foreign trust, but it's withholding from a foreign trust.
Yeah, frequently ask questions because I'm not, it's not giving me, it's not getting.
Let me see if it's here. I don't know if this is where the definition is. Where
frequently asked questions.
Only withhold from foreign, but I definitely want to put those. Okay, it says you are withholding. See, it says right there. Yep, you are withholding agent if you are a U.S. or foreign person that has control over the receipt, custody, disposal, or payment of any item of income from a foreign person that is subject to withholding. So you can only withhold from foreign persons. And that's always been my hesitation in advising anyone to do any 98 anything, because if the withholding people can only withhold from foreigners and then you register yourself as a foreigner, then you're subjecting yourself to the withholding agents because they can only withhold from foreign persons.
Hold on, I'm reading the paragraph here. Okay, so this is, again, it goes back into conflict because according to this, you're withholding based on a tax liability. If there is no tax liability, which is what I'm saying, there is none, then this
I understand what you're saying. I understand you're saying that there is no tax liability. So it's right. It's like right here where it says that is subject to withholding. It's like, okay, right. Well, but even if the person is not or is subject to withholding, right? Let's say they think someone is subject to withholding. The person is only subject if they're foreign. They're only potentially subject if they're foreign. That's the main part that I want to focus on, because this is the definition of.
But then it still goes back to say that foreign persons don't have tax liabilities. So again,
it's weird. This is actually saying, not saying that they guarantee to have tax liability, but if they were to have a taxing liability, it is because they're foreign, is what this is saying.
But again, from my experience, there is no tax liability. So it's a forever loop. That's a forever contradiction. Mm-hmm. There is no tax liability. So to say that I'm required to withhold something that is not there, it doesn't give, there is no, it's not there. There is no tax liability there. I mean, if you go and look at the different types of EIN numbers, some of them are tax exempt and they're foreign. So if you're only using the foreign tax exempt, if you're only using the foreign tax exempt number or category, then there's nothing. I mean, now if you go up under a status that is taxable, or maybe you're not able to deduct your liability or get rid of, expense out your liability, you may have to do that if you have a tax liability there, if you're not filing your papers correctly, if you're not registered properly under the correct category, then you might have to fall subject to that. But if you're going by what the law stipulates about these different categories of what is tax exempt and what is not, like an employee is not tax exempt. A black or white person is not tax exempt. Those people have tax liabilities. If you have certain small...
How do I automatically get a tax liability?
I'm sorry.
How does one automatically get a tax liability if the tax liability doesn't exist until
it's about how you choose to categorize yourself. All of it is voluntary. Even the tax exempt people, to get the categorization is voluntary, because if there was some, like I said, there are two different kinds of people that want to get away from IRS liabilities.
Totally.
The people who want to be in the commerce
Right.
department and people who don't.
Right.
So if you're going to voluntarily go into it so that you can participate in commerce, you're still doing it voluntarily. You just have.
I got that. I got that part. I'm just trying to understand that if it. This suggests, the first sentence suggests, not saying that everybody's automatically liable, but if you're going to be liable, you have to be foreign. It's like, it doesn't.
Okay, I think I'll say it this way.
It doesn't say that a domestic person, employee or not, or any other thing or not, is liable. I have to be foreign to be to be potentially liable. Is what this first thing is saying. Not that I'm automatically liable, but if I can get a liability, for withholding.
Let me see. I don't know if I'm reading it that way. You are a withholding agent if you are a U.S. or foreign person that has control, receipt, custody, disposal, or payment of any item of income of a foreign person that is subject to withholding. So again, if it is a foreign person that is subject to withholding, because all of them are not tax exempt.
Correct, I get that part. I'm just talking about the foreign part, because most of us going to work think that we're domestic.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think I read it the way you're saying that you're reading it. You're saying that it's requirements, or that having the foreign status is what qualifies all foreign entities to be subject to withholding.
I'm saying that some foreign entities may qualify for withholding, but in order to qualify withholding, period, you first have to be a foreign person. So you may or may not be liable even as a foreign person, but if you're domestic, it's saying that there's no withholding agent for you as a domestic person. There is no withholding agent.
So what would be a domestic person?
One who's not foreign. One who's not foreign.
But I mean, is there a categorization for a domestic person? Because if we're saying foreign persons, we already know that's a corporation, that's a legal fiction, that could be a natural person, it could be a lot of different person definitions.
Yes, but it still just has to be considered foreign, is my point. It just has to be non-domestic.
I'm not sure I'm following you on that.
Okay, it says you're a withholding agent if you
are a U.S. or foreign person
over these things of a foreign person. So if the
would
person
you say
that
U.S. is domestic?
If the person you're withholding from is not foreign, you are not a withholding agent for them.
Okay, but wait, I'm still trying to figure out your differentiation between foreign and domestic, because the way I'm reading this, and this is my understanding, is that U.S. would be considered domestic, and then foreign would be anything that is not an employee or registered agent of the U.S. So any person that is foreign would be any person that is a non-employee of the U.S. corporation.
Got you.
And so this is why I think we might be on different pages, because
I'm clear now.
Okay,
thank you for explaining.
No problem. And that's I'm kind of like, okay, so when we're talking about foreign and domestic, we understand now that the U.S. employees, their agents, their politicians and all those people who have that employment as a government worker, those are the people that are considered domestic to that corporation.
Okay.
So everybody else who would be, how they do the flip-flop on us, where we are the holders of the SSN, so they're going to call us citizens, but truly we are foreign, because we're not a part of that corporation.
Well, let me show you this. Correct. So you just reminded me of something. I don't know if you've ever seen who even qualifies to have an SSN.
Oh, that should be interesting.
Okay, so you haven't seen it. All right.
I don't know.
I'm drawing a blank because I put. Okay, here it goes. See, I'm drawing a blank, but my computer remembers.
Damn, I love it. Don't you love it?
So it says here clearly who can be assigned a Social Security number. So this is
okay. U.S. citizen, an alien.
Well, it gets better. Wait, don't skip ahead. Right? It says
I sure did skip ahead.
Persons eligible for SSN assignment. Okay, everybody's not even eligible because guess what? It says we can assign you, right? So you got to first be a you.
Right.
So look at the definition of you. You means an individual who owes already in advance before you even get it. You owe a debt.
Oh my God!
To the United States.
God! Now that is ridiculous. Look at this right now.
This is 100% of the reaction that I get from everyone I
Bitch! You up there? Nerve! I can't believe they have the nerve to put you. Oh my God!
Sign it, right?
Wow!
I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I'm glad I'm not the only one who had that reaction because some people try to act so calm. Okay, so all those secure party creditor people talking about how to bust into this secret, Cesta KV trust behind your SSN and all this nonsense. I was like, I just love to watch. I wish I could look at all their faces when I show it to them because, of course, I show it to people on calls and everybody don't have their camera on. But as soon as they started talking about this pot of gold behind the SSN, I'm like, so you don't know the definition.
Debt. Yeah, that is pure debt.
You have to already be here to even assign. You have to have, this is a debt previously contracted. So if you don't owe a debt to the United States at the time of your application, you do not qualify. You do not meet the evidence requirements. See what I'm saying? You can't even get to 1 and 2 and 3 because you're not a U.
Click on the 107. Click on the 107 section.
Oh, well, it just repeats this right here, but I will click on it. We'll click on it.
Okay, because I'm about to say, Lord, what is the requirements?
Yeah, but see, it gets back here. It says, to obtain a Social Security card, and they define it the same way here. They define the same way you. It all goes back to here. You means an individual who owes a debt to the United States. They slap in the face over and over. You.
I can't take it.
You. Your is you. It's all about employee benefits, which is employee administration. That's why it sparked this when we were having that brief conversation about the foreign withholding.
Right, and the reason why I was looking at it right here is because you as an employee are a slave, and for you to have Social Security benefits is basically you being kept on the plantation.
That's right.
And you get the scraps so that you get to stay there and keep the plantation running. That's your Social Security benefit.
Correct.
Oh my God.
Correct. But you already have to owe a debt to the United States to qualify. So what I've been doing, my sister, is showing people how to notify the Social Security that it was fraud in the inducement to even have our parents apply for this number, because they're basically saying that your parents are either making a legal determination near your birth that you are a ward of the state in advance. So are they not pledging you as a ward upon application for the assignment?
Absolutely, they are. They're they're putting you under the care of the state, and when the state gets becomes your guardian, it's basically you're the ward of the state. The state gets to determine what is in your best interest as their ward, as their property.
Exactly. So it's fraud in the inducement, and we tell them that the certification is false because they tell you that you have to certify all this nonsense under penalty of perjury, but the certification is false if at the time of the assignment one did not owe a debt. There was no proof on the record or anywhere that one owed a debt to the United States, so they were not eligible to even be assigned. So we're sending all those one-page notices to the IRS like, hey, I didn't qualify to be assigned.
Right, I don't owe you nothing. That's what I'm saying. Bitch, I cuss your ass out. I don't owe you shit. Oh my goodness. That's exactly what my paperwork would say, when I turn my one page in, I'm gonna put that shit in big ass red letters. Bitch, I don't owe you shit. Signed by you.
On the live yesterday where I showed people is to I tell them, me and one of my good friends, we like go like this, photocopy your face.
Yes.
Right in this section right here.
For real. The nerve of these, they have the audacity. It's just absolutely insane to me that they feel like we're not going to come looking for this stuff eventually. You know, it's like, yeah, I know that y'all been getting away with this junk, and I believe that's the reason why they know in prophecy that it was only going to take but so long for us to start coming up on
right here. They're not hiding it. So when people say,
no.
Disclosure, I didn't have full disclosure. You got full disclosure.
Because it's fully public. It's public knowledge.
It's published, and even if it was not online at the time of your birth or whatever,
yeah, it was still there.
It's in their book. This is the SS5.
Yeah.
And on the SS5, they tell you parts of the code that are going to be governing it. No one ever goes home with the form and goes, oh, I'm going to look up the Social Security Act.
No, they just send it to you. They send that shit to you in the mail.
No one researches it. I mean, this definition of you is...
that is insane to me. It's just like when I looked up the definition of employee. I can't believe that they would even do that. And that's the reason why I say we have to use our contract law to start redefining our terms and conditions, because the way that they define words is really what has caused them or basically given them the ability to hide and cloak themselves. They have been cloaked under definitions.
People want to go and read like Black's Law definitions and stuff like that. And I'm not against that, for someone to get their own personal comprehension of certain terms.
Yes.
But we have to understand that when we're communicating with the Social Security Administration, for example, they have obviously their terms.
Their own definitions.
And if you keeps using the word you with the Social Security Administration without knowing their definition, you're going to be screwed.
Yep, because I'm thinking that if you communicate with them, if you correspond with them, you have to set your own definitions as you're speaking. Because when you say you are defining the word you as this, that, and the other, I'm defining it this way when I speak, and this is what I'm making reference to.
Oh, well, I like to use their terms against them. So I would say something like, I'm not a you according to your definition, so I don't qualify, I'm not eligible for your SSN assignment, therefore anything in your system that currently seems to certify that I am attached to that account is now noticed as void.
Yes.
Because of the fraud from the inducement. Because at the time of the application, I was not eligible to be assigned. Period. That's it. You don't have to say shit else.
That's it.
And even if they never remove the number or they never remove the name associated with the number or whatever, because you already put them on notice, you've disassociated yourself with that number. So they like to lie and say, oh, well, we don't have any statutory authority to delete any of the information. That's what people have given feedback.
That's what they say.
Okay. However, you didn't have the authority to put the shit in there. So how are you going to rectify that? There has to be a way for you to remove it based on the fact that it was not even supposed to be there.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Okay, and I want to come back to something that you talked about us making up our own numbers. And I think that once we have our own administration, we can start doing that. We can create a numbering system, because that's a part of a corporate body, that you have a numbering system for your files and accounts. And so I think that when we do start to get our own centralized administration, we can go ahead and start making up our own.
I actually encourage people to make their own numbers right now in the private, because I feel that each individual is their own administration of their own affairs.
That's correct.
And there's danger in centralization, a lot of danger, because it in some way takes away some of that personal individual power to be able to control that, because you're still got to call your agency and be like, hey, delete that number or update this number or whatever, where if it's yours, even though it might seem remedial, it's yours. You create it. So let's say you make all your numbers with your initial. So the first one will be, MMD 1 2 3 4 5 6, and the next one is MMD 1 2 3 4 5 7, and the next one, or whatever. And no one can actually tell you a law that prevents you from doing that right now. It does make sense what you're saying, however, that some businesses might not be able to or are not set up to manage that or whatever, but I think that's incorrect technically too, because my son went and applied for a position that we actually had to sue the Equal Opportunity Employment, sue through the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission in September. He didn't give them his social, and they kept telling him, we have to have your social for the W-2. And we kept telling them, of course you have to have the social for the W-2, but the
W-2
the W-2 only comes after the voluntary W-4. So if I don't fill out the voluntary W-4, then there's no conversation necessary about the mandatory W-2.
All right. We see, and this is where I'm coming in saying that he could have easily told them, hey, issue me a W-9 and I'll give you my EIN number. We'd be all good.
But he doesn't have an EIN number. And like I said, because the W-4 is 100% voluntary, the only reason they want a number is to withhold.
But they don't withhold on the 1099 non-employee compensation. They don't.
Yeah, they don't. But
you don't. You get your gross pay.
But if you give them an EIN in the place of SSN without telling them that you're a 1099, they will withhold from that EIN.
I've never seen the EIN number have withholdings, but this is
in their payroll department. Because if you get an EIN and you put it in there, the payroll department puts it in their system, and then they use that number to justify withholding.
But that's what I'm saying. Not on the EIN, on the SSN. Yes, I used to work for ADP as well, and this is one reason why I kind of went into this area of service, is because I was able to see from both sides how this works. Good. A non-employee compensation, nobody does anything with that. A 1099. If I told you I'm gonna pay you $5,000 on a 1099, I'm giving you $5,000 on the 1099.
Yeah, but they don't give you the 1099. And you can clarify this or correct me if I'm wrong. If I get a W-4. A regular W-4, and I put an EIN number in there, you're saying the payroll department is going to know that's an EIN and not an SSN and automatically not withhold?
No, I would say there. So like you said, all this is voluntary now. So you can tell them which one you want. You can tell them, I don't want the W-4. I don't want the W-2. I want the W-9. I want you to, and when you issue me a W-9, I'm going to respond with my proper category of an EIN number. You're going to process that as my payroll, non-employee compensation. You're going to give me my gross pay, and so I become responsible
when
for
they
whatever.
Give you when they offer the W-4, you're suggesting to enter a W-9 instead.
And request decline the W-4, request a W-9, because those
what if they say, well, we're not looking for an independent contractor, we just want an employee?
But that's the reason why, again, this program I have is designed to teach the employer why they should not be doing that, because they have no responsibility to do that. They think that they're required to ask for the W-4, but under the law and under all rules, you are volunteering which one you want. And so
what they did was they kept, I mean, I can forward you the emails back and forth so you can see the conversation, but it's like they were not even hearing.
That you don't want to do that.
Gave them the W-9, they would probably, in my opinion, harped on the same thing, because they were just like focused on this W-2.
Yeah, they may have.
But I know. Here's what's funny: the woman I was talking to, because I spoke to her in person, I knew she was being genuine, but she deceived, because she kept saying, I understand, but we have to do the W-2.
Right.
We have to.
They think they do. They think they do.
And we kept telling her, yes. No, they do have to. If you voluntarily fill out that W-4, they absolutely 100% have to do that.
If you do that. But I'm saying what a lot of them think,
but
that
we could not get through to her that we're not arguing about the W-2. I kept telling, we're not, it's like we're in agreement. We agree with you 100% about the W-2. But we're not talking about the W-2, because the W-2 can only happen after a voluntary W-4.
Right. And this is what I'm saying. So
volunteer for the W-4.
Volunteer both. You volunteer both. You volunteer the W-9 or the W-2.
Even so, the justification for the W-2, like a W-2 cannot exist without those 4. It's impossible.
I agree.
Is what I'm trying to tell her.
Right. She should know that.
and she kept she 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 just thinks the W-4 is mandatory, just like you say, you know, with the W-9. They think that they don't know, like, one, it's an both of them are voluntary, and either of them can be used interchangeably.
They can.
She was just, because with a W-9 there is no W-2.
Right. No, you get a 1099 non-employee.
Right, but she keeps saying that she has to do the W-2. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
yes,
she's
yes.
so
And
convinced.
this is okay. So look, I'm gonna check the beautiful
would not
thing.
have said, yes, go ahead, fill out the W-9, no problem, because she didn't even offer it as an alternative or anything. She just purposely, like, if they don't get this W-2, she kept showing me the IRS is gonna fine us. And what's funny is the IRS is gonna fine you, but it's only $50 freaking dollars.
Well, no, okay. So let me tell you where the problem comes in. I'm gonna tell you where the problem comes in for them. The IRS, like I said earlier in our conversation, the IRS is pimping these people and making them believe that they have to do this because they're not educating them on the real fullness of the voluntary nature of these forms.
Correct.
Okay, so the IRS has all these small businesses thinking that if you do not get this W-4 from these people so that we can start taking withholdings out of their checks, then we are going to fine you for not standing in this intermediate position where you're taking
only.
Oh, no, because no, it gets deeper for them, because then you have to deal with you have to deal with unemployment insurance, and you have to deal with employment insurance or employment tax. So what happens is, it's not just the $50 fine. What they're getting them on is employment tax. Because if you're not getting these W-4 forms and you're not taking out the taxes for your employees, then you're liable for this employment tax that's not being collected. But it's not their responsibility to collect it. And if they knew that they didn't have to have employees, that they could get in contractors, they wouldn't have to do none of that.
My sister
never
has
be
a store,
no question for
anybody. Like, she did everybody like that, so she knows that she doesn't have to do any of that nonsense. And her store has been open for several years, like 3, I think. Yeah, this is January, I think. 3 years ago we had her store opening. She's had employees, but she's never done any withholding.
It's not her responsibility.
What's that?
It's not her responsibility. That's one reason why
she's never done anything from the IRS. I just want to share that with you.
As long as she's doing 1099s, she's perfectly safe from all of that.
Yeah, they've never sent her any, like, oh, how come you're not doing this, or oh, we're gonna fine you, or oh, we're offing you, or anything like that.
Interesting. That's so interesting. Now, I really am. I'm happy about me having the perspective I have from working for ADP and working for the IRS, and me having, just this exposure to studying law. It kind of gives me a little bit of a different perspective to be able to tell people, listen, the IRS is, they basically, they process these documents based on what is written in this Internal Revenue Manual. That's how we process all of our documents. If there's anything that comes into the Internal Revenue Service, it needs to be processed. If you don't have what they call an ERM reference to justify the action that you took, then that's going to be an open liability on their part. So what they do is they write down all of these policies and procedures in this manual, and that's how they process the documents, or that's how they process requests. So when they get a W-9 with an EIN number and it says, oh, well, I issued a 1099 a non-employee compensation for this contractor, and I also have already predetermined the relationship for this 1099 worker, not an employee, but a 1099 worker, then it completely absolves you of any type of responsibility from IRS or the Department of Labor for you to get an employment tax, unemployment insurance, or any type of tax liability, any of that. It gets negated because you have the voluntary option to choose the SSN or the EIN. And it really
does. As we saw, it says it's even if you did give it to them, even if you did voluntarily sign the W-4 and all that, you could still terminate it.
You can. Yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. Because it's just like any other voluntary, like the thing said, voluntary. I put in a request, I'm withdrawing the request.
Correct.
That's how it works. And because we have this sovereign, natural, whatever kind of, natural ability for us to determine what we choose to do and what we choose not to do. It's like any type of other mutual contract agreement. Then that is really what gives us the power to say, this is what I'm doing, and I'm just notifying you of it. I'm not asking your permission. I'm not getting guidance from you. I'm not following your rules or laws. I'm simply doing what I'm doing, and I'm letting you know. That's it.
So that brings me, I appreciate that, and that's what that's the attitude that everybody has to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And just two things about the withholding agent. Now, apparently, the withholding agent, in order to be a valid withholding agent, they're supposed to have filled out a form, a 885 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Do you know that?
I'm not familiar with an 885.
I don't know if it's 885, but I'm going to tell you for sure because I pulled it up when I was doing my research in this conversation that I want to show you. I'm going to send it to you so you can read it privately because you're going to definitely want to click on the quotes and watch this woman's brain get stuck on this W-2. So that's what prompted this filing that I'm showing you here. I hope you can see it. It's with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Mm-hmm. And
we gotta work together. I mean, I'm looking to put together a good, reliable team of people to help me consult with my clients so we can teach them these things. I would love for us to get aligned in our thinking and our understanding of these laws so we could maybe bring some clients in and start making some good money, because the service that I'm charging for the small businesses is up to $6,500 to get them administratively structured properly and teaching them, basically training them on how to deal with the IRS and communicate with the IRS about their classification of their workers.
Yeah, because it's going to save them money too. And even my 19-year-old was able to understand that. He's like, we're saving them money. We're literally saving them money. And I'm like,
they don't have to go through all the extra payroll. They don't have to worry about the unemployment insurance or the employment.
I'm like, if a 19-year-old could comprehend what I'm saying I didn't do any like formal nothing. And my son was able to just be like, yeah, but wouldn't we be saving them money if they don't have to pay this and that? I'm like, right. You think they just all run to do it, but they don't, because that woman, I saw fear in her eyes.
Yes.
Through her, even though she's wearing her mask, she was so like, I knew she personally wasn't being deceptive. Like she just totally deceptive.
Yeah, because they're scared. You know, the IRS is pretty effective at scaring people. The IRS scares people for real. And they just be scared. And so what I try to do is when I'm talking to people, because I network and I get out there and I talk to business owners about this. And one lady, she told me, she said, I had a run-in about this exact same thing, how I'm classifying my workers. And she said, they fired me, it almost put me out of business because they charged me all this money I had to pay. So she said, I would love to learn more about what you're talking about, because they hit me where it hurt when I was already struggling. And I said, you know what, this is definitely going to be something that we have to alleviate fears around it before we can get anybody to truly act on it. But I will also say that on the flip side of that same coin, you got some people out there that's like, fuck the government. How you say I'm about to get around this shit? Help me get this together so I can go ahead and get it right. And there's people from both sides that don't care and they ready to do it. And then there's some people that are really timid and scared. So we'll just have to deal with it however they come.
Well, this is the HR director. So she's not the owner necessarily. So I could understand why they might have a little bit more fear as just being an employee, because they're probably afraid of
trying to cover somebody else's ass.
Right.
We're going to get them together. That's okay.
I'm not sure how I could forward you the entire conversation, but I'm going to try. But you see where it's starting off? Clarification of the definition of employee. This is where we started off.
Yep, that's it. And we're using collective bargaining agreements. I'm going to tell you, there's an additional tool that I'm going to teach my clients about how to use these collective bargaining agreements so that they don't have to even go through private agreements for each individual employee.
Right.
They can create and establish a collective bargaining agreement which determines the employee relationship for all their workers, and depending on whoever they just hire. If I hire you, this is what the definition is.
Right.
And this is how the IRS has set forth. So if I say that under my private agreement with my employees, whoever gets a job here, they automatically agree to the terms and conditions that I'm paying you on a 1099. I'm not giving you no W-2. And that's the private agreement that we're agreeing to. That's the relationship we're establishing, and that's the relationship that the IRS will respect as long as we put it on this private agreement.
And that is the SSA.
That's the SSA, that line 11.
That SSA, is it initially filled out by the hirer
Yes, the employer does get the SS8 because what they're doing is either they're trying to ask the IRS to make a determination, or they're providing the work relationship under that contract on 9/11. So it's going to be one or the other.
Got it. Well, this has been awesome. I would definitely like to work with you.
Yay, I'm excited because I've been following you for a long time. Long time.
Most of my friends have been around with me for a while.
Learning, just soaking it all up. Trust me, I be in the background. I don't say much, but I be in the background just soaking it up. And I love you for it because it's really helped me a lot.
I see you. I'm like, Reese is talking to me. Let me
Hey, I be doing the damn thing. I'm trying to. I said this year is my millionaire year. I'm hitting $1 million status this year, and I'm not stopping until I get there.
I love it, and I am.